Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Harry Potter Trading Card Game Podcast. My name is Sammy,
And I'm Huamin.
and today we are going to be talking about lock decks, and we'll define what those are, and then we'll go through some examples. But we just want to talk about decks that kind of lock you out of the game. You had a really great definition of it, so let's talk about
Oh,
that.
yeah, thank you. I define these kinds of decks as decks that make it either hard or impossible for your opponent to take meaningful actions. What meaningful actions here would be are actions that allow you to advance your game plan. So, like playing your lessons and then playing maybe your spells that like either find you your stuff or deal damage to your opponent, things like that. If you're unable to either like play cards that do things or unable to like draw cards, yeah, these are ways that you're kind of just locked out of the game. And I do want to first say there's a difference between kind of these hard locks that are just you can't play the game versus soft locks that are you can't play the game but only for a little while.
Which I think is a great space to be. Like, only a
Yeah.
little bit of like, don't do the thing is fine. Like, one turn of not being able to do something, great. More than that is just kind of unfun for me.
Yeah. If we take one of the cards that is now on the banned list, deboning, we thought deboning is unfun when it is played multiple times. So we first restricted it. And then we realized that even when it was restricted, people were still finding ways to play this multiple times.
Yep. It was still
And,
dominating.
and it got banned.
Yeah. And that was partially with a revival card, Hogwarts of History, when it was 6 cost. And the loop of that created that hard lock. So that's what we're talking about with a hard lock of you literally cannot do almost anything. Like, you can still activate card effects and play, but that requires that you have that in the first place, which is a different situation.
And usually, when you're unable to further develop your board, it's kind of trivial for your opponent to, make sure that your board doesn't exist anymore.
You gotta play a couple of like picking on Neville's or something when your opponent can't do anything, and you just
Yeah,
steamroll them. And like, is
yeah.
that fun? I mean, there is that brand of control player out there who probably really enjoys that. I don't think most people enjoy hurting people like that, but I don't know. I,
I don't usually play control in this game, but I do play control in other games, and don't look at me like that.
Yep, I have a lot of thoughts about that, but this is not a conversation about control as an archetype. It's just lock decks, which are
So,
different things.
yes, even though oftentimes they kind of verge into similar territory because they both usually want to slow down the game, so they'll run similar cards. Let's get into some specific examples. We already talked about deboning, which doesn't exist anymore, and thank God for that. But
It took a
let's talk
while,
about
but we got there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We first start off this list with another card that doesn't exist anymore, at least in Revival,
Yeah,
which
and these
is
these are like decks or cards then that fall into this hard lock area.
yeah. So first one on our list is Caught by Snape. Pretty classic adventure in many ways, where it makes it so that you can only play lessons, and then your reward is you get to play more lessons, and then they play another one.
And then that also comes down turn one. So in theory, like turn one for you, you do have enough lessons in your hand to solve Caught by Snape. But then if they play a second one, that's where the issues start coming.
Yeah, well, it's also not really that great of a turn one play because if you're
Yeah,
spending your turn one to make it so that they can only play lessons and then they want to play lessons, like,
it's
okay,
rough. Yeah.
that's not great. It comes down usually like maybe turn two after they've played like double lesson or something, which I think you just can't really do in Classic because if you do play double lesson and they play Caught by Snape, you're kind of just boned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, that is a card that we will henceforth not talk about anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
I do just want to stress that like I think one of the large issues with that card is that the prize you get doesn't do anything for you. And I think we've talked before on an episode, probably when we were talking about like the linear creature power cost, how we think the original designers had it in their mind that the most important thing you're going to be doing is just like playing as many lessons as possible. So the prize of getting to play more lessons probably was perceived as really good for the original sets, but we understand that that is not really what this game wants or not really the healthiest thing or that you want to be doing. So that's why this card is just like problematic within itself for creating that really
yeah.
hard lock. And then you can also like what Hannah Abbott to get this back, and then just play another one like later in the game too.
Or end of term fees. You
Tons
know,
of
when you
things.
take back four of these from your discard pile, and then you
Yep.
start, and you have Fred and George Weasley, so you can reset the counter on it. Like, yeah, you know,
Yep.
that's not really a great play pattern. I do want to
Agree.
touch that the reward is actually sometimes a reward. It's not never useful. Sometimes, like when they play Caught by Snape on you, you can actually just you play two lessons, bring it down to one, and then you play a lesson, drop a bunch of things, and then you just kill them with like platform VTJ.
Yep.
It's a thing that happens. It's a thing that like came into the classic metagame because Caught by Snape is kind of everywhere, and it's like a counter to the traditional like Caught by Snape-ish thing if they don't have Fred and George to continually reset this.
Yes.
Where we were talking about like hard locks versus soft locks. Caught by Snape, if it's just in a deck, it's creating a soft lock where you're like very temporarily like, okay, sometimes it's not temporary. You just can't draw lessons and you're locked out of the game forever. And
Yep.
like, sorry. But it's a temporary, oftentimes just a temporary thing. But
Whereas
the
something like Through the Arch is more of a soft lock because it's temporary, you can solve it, and then the prize is something kind of related but unrelated. It's just different. But also, like Through the Arch lets you still play 8 other card types and
yeah,
do other things. Whereas CBS is just like, nope, do this one thing and don't do anything else.
yeah, we're gonna move off of Caught by Snape.
Yes.
Not my favorite card.
Yeah. Great art, fantastic art, but yeah, not great overall. But the
And by
next
that,
one,
plus card in power levels.
yes,
Sorry, SSS plus card in power level. Anyways,
yes, it's
Love
rough.
Potion.
It is
Cool.
rough, yeah. Yeah, so Love Potion is going to be the next one. So when we had designed this, I thought this card was absolute trash. And you and Frizz were like, no, like it's going to be good. And I was like, it's going to like 4 cost. And you guys were right. This card is very good and essentially just prevents damage, but then you discard it at the beginning or the end of your turn. I forgot which. But the issue is that you can just keep looping it over and over again and essentially create an endless loop where no damage can be done to you. And while you're doing that, you still have another one, usually 2 actions because you're playing this with Draco Malfoy Slytherin. So you're really getting this back for free every single turn because Draco will give you back that action. And then you can just use those other 2 actions to control your opponent in whatever way you want to control them, whether that's removing their stuff or advancing your own board in some way or whatever direction you want to go. And that is really hard to come back against, especially considering this is a life decking game and doing damage is generally the way to win. So that's
Yeah.
just rough.
It also like doesn't stop your opponent from interacting with your board usually. It just kind of makes brass scales just kind of makes interacting with your board sometimes very futile.
Brass
Because
scales is hard, yeah.
yeah, it's you can just recover so easily from things. But it's kind of a lock in that it stops you from taking meaningful actions if your game plan was to take actions to deal damage to your opponent, which
Yeah.
you know a lot of
Most of it.
decks do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it deserves its place on this list.
Yes, it's not as hard of a lock as everything else, but it definitely has that area where you're just like, ooh, this sucks to play against.
Yeah.
That's
Next
why
card.
I keep saying
Oh.
Chamber of Secrets is a way better card than people keep saying it is because it stops stuff like Love Potion. And I just think that, and some loops that we'll talk about later too, it stops. And I just think it's an amazing card. But that's not, yeah. Anyway,
Next card, Faux Glass. So this card means that your opponent can only take one action. Oftentimes it's paired with Pep Talk, where their only action is just draw a card, and you can see where this is going.
yep. That's why you should always put a card with 8 or more power in every single deck just for Pep Talk.
I mean, the rule of thumb is just have an answer for Pep Talk. If your answer is an 8 power card that you've shoved in there, or like several copies of an 8 power card that you're possibly not going to ever play, and it just exists for Pep Talk, like sometimes, man, sacrifices have to be made in deck building.
But we've also tried to design one card in every archetype that like is 8 or more power to resolve Pep Talk. So Pep Talk will always be there. It's just like this ghost behind us. But Faux Glass as a whole creates other locks. Somebody played it, a couple people maybe, at least one, in the last tournament, and they were trying to essentially lock out their opponent by getting advantage with things with like Forbidden Corridor, Hermione's Time Turner, and Professor Hagrid. So they kept getting free lessons in play, and they weren't ever going down on that while their opponent was losing stuff every single turn. And then they were able to use their one action to do whatever was advancing their state or controlling their opponent, and their opponent just fell more and more behind. Because only having one action in a game where you start with two is very difficult to come back from.
And also when you have Forbidden Corridor out and you're losing a card a turn and you only have one action to replace that card, like yeah, it's a little rough.
It was very rough.
Which does bring us to Forbidden Corridor, which is another kind of lock-ish deck where it tries to. I mean, the end goal of Forbidden Corridor is to make it so your opponent doesn't have any cards in play. If they don't have cards in play, it's kind of hard for them to take meaningful actions, especially whenever they play a card, it kind of just gets deleted.
I do think that out of all the cards on this list, Corridor seems to be the one that people have, I would say, adapted to the most, whether that's running their own like card
Location.
to counter it, or whether they just learned what they need to discard and what they can keep. I think it's been around so long and it's so popular that people just are learning how to play against it, which we'll talk about ways to kind of like deal with these locks later. That's a great way to also deal with them, is just to understand them really well and then learn how to play against them really well. And so Corridor is kind of now in that realm. I think it can get more locky than it currently is, but that's definitely a place it sits.
Moving on, the next one on our list is not really a card, but it's more of an archetype, which is Hand Destruction. If every turn all you can do is draw a card and hope it's good, that's kind of a lock. So you can go like really, really extreme with the old like Draco the Seeker plus either Letters from No One, which is now gone, or Human
it's
Chess
banned.
Game. Yeah, which is not a great card, but kind of exists, and then just keep making them discard cards where they can only just draw cards to try to solve this adventure. Like, yeah, that's kind of a lock, basically a lock. Or if your entire game plan is just play for purple firecrackers over and over, that's also kind of a
Great card.
lock. It certainly is a card, but once you hit with your like seventh purple firecrackers in a game, you kind of just stop liking the card.
That's very fair. And I think Human Chess Game is an interesting one because it's similar to Faux Glass in terms of this, like you with Faux Glass and Human Chess Game, as a person playing it, you have to restrict what you're doing in order to restrict what your opponent is doing. So there's kind of a lot of setup that does need to occur before like these locks can take place. Once that setup is there and the lock is in place, it sucks to have it played against you, but the setup can sometimes be like really like wobbly or just not there.
I mean, they're inherently like you have to play them, and then your opponent gets an entire turn to be like, how am I dealing with this?
Yeah. And then
Um,
the next lock that we're going to talk about kind of has died, like it's kind of come back, but lesson stuff. We banned two cards, Scribbler Force and Invisible Ink. They were kind of the two biggest threats that kind of destroyed your lessons, and we removed those, and the lesson destruction decks that were really rampant, I think, for the first like 3 years of our play have kind of died, which is good because they would just remove all your lessons and then you would never have enough to do what your deck wanted to do. The most clear example of this is the combo decks didn't really exist before this banning occurred, because you couldn't get up to the 8 or 9 power you needed for the combo decks in a consistent way. And then we got rid of those two cards and Lesson Destruction kind of went away and combo decks popped up again. I think that's a win, but we need to balance Lesson Destruction still existing in some capacity.
yeah, like I don't think that Lesson Destruction currently has like a great home. You could argue that like yes, maybe Lesson Destruction should not exist in like a tier 1 meta deck. That's an okay opinion. I have no real opinion on where it should exist or not, but it is also just kind of frustrating to play against.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into a little bit later. Anyways, Lesson Destruction. But last two are looping cards that kind of just don't let you play the game, usually with Hogwarts of History. Since Deboning's gone, there is also another card that has Deboning's text on it. If you didn't know, it's Forgetfulness Potion. It just
But
requires
with
you
an
to,
additional thing, yeah.
yeah, it just requires you to discard a potions lesson, which makes it much harder to play and much more balanced.
Way more balanced. Way more balanced.
The effect is still strong, so I don't know. People don't play Forgetfulness Potion. Maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. I don't know. Don't listen to me. I don't know anything about this game. So there's that, and there's Snuffling Potion, which probably like people only really remember for the Snuffling Potion plus Burrow combo, but it is a way to just say your opponent can't play the game if your opponent can never draw a card ever again.
Yeah, so if you can loop Snuffling Potion in some way and destroy their hand, then you probably have won. And if you haven't won, then you are probably not a great player if you've set up that situation and you can't come out on top.
They could just have an extremely favorable board state where you just die the next turn.
That's
Hey,
true.
don't knock their skill in this hypothetical game that may or may not exist.
Yeah, but so most of what we just talked about are essentially cards that just say like you don't get to do anything on your turn. Hand destruction, like you don't get to play any cards because you have no hand. Lesson destruction, you don't get to play anything because you have no lessons in play. Faux glass, forgiveness potion, whatever, like you don't get to play anything because you have no actions. And so these are just cards that set up like a more permanent state of you don't get to do the things. And so that's really what we're talking about here. And so those I think are most of the examples we could think about that exist. I'm sure there's one or two that we missed, but I'd be surprised if there were more than just like one.
Or maybe it's some like convoluted 27 card combo that
Takes half your deck.
yeah. But it doesn't actually exist for actual conversation.
But yeah, so we talked about all of these different hard locks that exist. And I'm sure some of you have played against them. I know that we've played against most of these cards at this point, and we've been frustrated by them and also been like, oh, that's kind of cool. Can I get out of this? And we've had these situations. But we want to talk about how are we going to handle them when we get to this spot. And this is hopefully going to be beneficial for all of you playing to understand like, okay, I'm here. How do I get from point A to point B so I can start playing the game again? Or what do I need to think about beforehand?
Because one of the best ways to handle them is to be proactive about it. Like, sure, all these different locks require different answers, but it's usually clear from the outset, like what your opponent is trying to do. If they're like, wow, they started Professor Hagrid and they're playing Transfig lessons and they're trying to get to 6. Maybe they're playing Forbidden Corridor on me. You can just be cognizant of that. Like, okay, I need to save my location for when they play Forbidden Corridor. Or if they look like they would be playing something like, I don't know, Through the Arch.
Yeah, and there's some harder lock, I don't know if they're harder lock, but softer lock, whatever, but like in the stands or hiding from Snape that are like super oppressive to one particular type of card, but they're not necessarily like a hard lock because you can still kind of get out of them.
If you think that your opponent's going to play these on you, you can play like Confiscated Map, Argus Filch, things that can answer these. You put in a little bit of investment early to make your opponent either disincentivized to play their card. If you play Argus Filch, they don't really want to play Pep Talk. Or if you play Confiscated Map, they just can't play Pep Talk.
Yeah. And I think this is where the sideboard becomes really important. Well, two things. One is the sideboard, and then one is understanding the current meta or the current like most played cards or whatnot. Because if you understand like the 8, 7-ish legal cards above that we talked about, you'll see that there's many items and then a lot of like discard pile, bring back to play your hand. So like do your sideboard so that you're going to counter those two things. Put in Table Troubles, put in Chamber of Secrets or whatever the other adventurers that we made that's a Chamber of Secrets, Return of the Dark Mark or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so like build your sideboard to like counter these things. That is kind of what the sideboard is for. Maybe you put like one or two generic cards that can kind of counter various things in your main deck. But this is where like I think being a better deck builder and player is recognizing these things and preparing for them.
Interaction pieces always good. Maybe your interaction pieces are more generic in your main board, but in the sideboard you can get really specific about these. And then another way to kind of like counter them early, Azkaban is a great counter for a whole slew of other things, but in addition to that, it is a counter for specifically like if they're just looping a single card. If they're trying to Snuffling Potion loop you, and then now their Snuffling Potion requires 2 actions to play, it's pretty hard to keep looping.
Disrupting their tempo like that does so much. Like one little thing like that can do so much and give you maybe one turn to get back into the game. And maybe that's all you need. And then all of a sudden their lock isn't there anymore. Azkaban's wonderful.
Yep. So you can attack their efficiency. Another way is a lot of these sometimes attack your hand or your lesson base. So play more lessons, play more card draw.
Always play more lessons in card draw.
Yeah. I mean, card draw is kind of like very important because the draw one card action is like not good at all.
No, no, it's not.
So being able to find other ways to be efficient about your card draw can, one, it'll just help your game plan, and two, it'll also help your game plan when you get hit by that seventh purple firecrackers.
You really like playing 7 copies of that card, I see.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good card when your opponent
Oh,
discards
it
21
is.
cards from their deck or from their hand. Like, that's pretty rough.
Yeah, it's a great card. I agree. But yeah, and then sometimes you just want to create your own board state that is just favorable for you or that can help you kind of get out of these locks. Because a lot of these locks are more you can't play cards, but many of these locks don't say anything about being able to or not being able to activate abilities of cards in play. So there's a lot of permanence in this game. The only thing in this game that doesn't stay in play are spells. Everything else will stay in play after you play it. So things like Arthur, Stan or Blackboard ads will give you the ability to use an action to activate their ability to then do damage to your opponent or do something else. And there's a lot of characters that say like once per game you may do this or once per turn you may do this. So characters are just generally a great way to get out of these locks because once they're in play, you're good to go. There's also a lot of just like creatures or items that give you some kind of like push forward, whether that's just creatures doing straight up damage and putting that pressure on your opponent. That's actually how I got out of Glass. I had creatures that were just doing so much damage, and my opponent needed to use 2 actions to play Pomfrey and Snape 2 turns in a row. So I got my actions back, and then I could just advance my game even further. So creatures do a ton for you. And then items in general will do a lot for you too, and they have a lot of abilities as well. So you use them a lot.
And then the last way, I mean, it's kind of the counter to
Yeah.
every combo deck because locks are kind of just another combo deck. They
Yeah.
kind of get into this like OTK territory, but their OTK is not one turn kill. It's a many turn kill. Just go faster than them. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you can just play the tempo game. You can play the aggro game and just race them down before they can achieve their lock. It's also a life decking game, so if you just make them discard important combo pieces, then it's
Yeah.
difficult for them to play the game. And also, if they have no deck, it is also difficult for them to play the game. So just check them
That
out.
is true. Very true. They don't have a deck. It's hard to play the game. That's funny.
It's the truth.
No, it is. It's just funny. But yeah, so these are kind of some ways to handle these harder locks. There's other ways that I'm sure you all have kind of found or thought about. I'm not sure what they are right now because we talked about this beforehand, but I'm sure there are more again that we just
Yeah.
haven't really touched on. I think the moral of that would be like find whatever little like niche locks or break out of the locks that you have found and just like maybe you
Mhm.
include that in every single one of your decks or as many decks as you can, or you find additional things and like additional colors that are similar to that breakout, but maybe aren't the same kind of breakout. And those will in general just kind of help you a lot.
And I think also as a deck builder, you should be cognizant, like, am I weak to certain types of locks? Like, if my deck hits a hand destruction deck, is it just going to fold? Okay, I need to figure out ways to mitigate this.
Yeah.
Or if someone just keeps playing Love Potion on me, do I have an answer to that? If
Yep.
not, maybe I should find an answer. Maybe not. It's up to you.
But again, going back to this kind of like idea of become a better deck builder and player is to, as soon as you come across, these types of decks in casual play or tournaments, whatever, to actually reflect on that and say like, yeah, I am weak to this. What do I need to do to change my deck to make my deck be able to compete or combat this or whatever? And like part of being a great deck builder and player is thinking about it after your games and adapting and not just saying, well, I lost that, I'm going to move on and just go play again. You always want to be growing and just kind of like adapting as you need to.
And locks force adaptation. So our next section is, are these good or bad? Maybe that's one of the ways that they're good. Let's start with the bad side. Well, actually, Sammy has another take on this. You should go first.
So my opinion on like hard locks, my opinion on like games in general is that you should never not be able to play a game. Like if there's ever a point where a game says you no longer get to play, I think it's a poorly designed game. And that's why I think like in this, for one example, one of the actions you can take is to draw cards. That way you're never just like out of a hand. In theory, you can always do that. Now there's cards that stop you from using actions to do that. And we talked about that above a little bit. But I just think getting to say like, you're here to play this, but I'm going to say, no, don't play this is just a poor spot for something to live in.
Yeah, and my response to that was you can just concede.
Yeah, which is a whole other conversation too.
Yeah.
You can
Uh,
just concede, sure, sure.
yeah.
Cheap way
Um,
out, but I guess.
Yeah, like you're a super hard anti-concession person,
Yes, I
and I
am.
understand. I'm more likely concede if you don't have a way that you can win the game, or in a tournament setting, there's also other reasons to concede.
Which will be the one spot where I will agree with you. When you're in a timed setting, I think saying, like you win, I can't get out of this, that makes sense because you have 45 or 60 minutes to play three games. You need the time. I get that. But in just like our tournaments where online it's kind of vague how much time you really get. Like play through and just like finish the game, or if you're like casually playing, like yeah, just finish the game. Because I'm much more of like a casual fun player than a like super like I just want to win kind of player. And so if somebody is able to do their thing, I just want to watch them do their thing, and I'm like, great, I'm gonna lose, but you get to do the thing, and that's really cool. And so I usually
Uh,
come at it from more of like that perspective.
that is like 100% like the casual commander mindset.
Yes, it's
Like,
very much what I do. Yes. I'm like, oh my God, you did that thing. It's so cool. I lost. That's fantastic because you did the
yeah,
thing and we all laughed. And I'm like, that's what I want. So that's why I'm like against just giving up during a game. I'm like, play it out.
yeah,
Let someone do their cool thing. But your
yeah.
point is also very, very valid.
Yeah, this goes to the next point. We're skipping down a lot. Okay.
It's fine.
That I think that there's healthy and unhealthy play patterns in a lock. And one of the problems with a lot of these in HBTCG is that they're non-deterministic. What I mean by that is there is like a theoretical chance that you could win the game after a lock has been achieved, in most of these cases, but the possibility of it happening is extremely small. Like, so say like they get Forbidden Quarter out and then like they start killing all your lessons, and then you know that your deck has 8 more lessons in it and you need like 6 of them in play to win the game. Like, sure, it's possible that you get there. It's not probable though.
Yeah,
But
very
it's
slim margin.
so like that's a situation that is non-deterministic because your opponent possibly could lose the game. You could possibly still win the game. And like, should you play it out there? First question is, do you play it out? That's a much different question than should you
It's
play
very
it out?
different. Yes, yes.
Uh, because in a tournament setting, like, yeah, your mindset should be different. And it probably is than in a casual setting where you're probably more likely to be like, oh yeah, you got me. That's okay. Let's move on to the next game. And the third one is like, is it fun to be in this position of being in this like wibbly wobbly? I have a 97% chance to lose the game from this position. Am I incentivized to keep playing it out? And that's like what I think is kind of unhealthy about any sort of like combo-ish deck. Is if there's no clear point where your opponent should be like, oh yeah, there's no way for me to win the game, I concede. Because I think a big part of like the bad rap that locks get is that people keep playing them out and they get frustrated when they can't do anything.
Probably, yeah.
And that's like part of the deck. It's like it's
Yes.
supposed to make you not be able to do anything.
Yep.
And the easiest way to get out of a lock is to concede the game.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. Whether I agree
Uh,
with like doing that or not, like you're not wrong.
Yeah. And I think that like if there's like 100% chance, okay, your opponent is like looping some weird like start of term feast plus Hogwarts of History plus Snuffling Potion, and there's no possible chance of you getting out of the lock. Like, yeah, okay, you can just concede the game. You don't need to spend 10 more minutes drawing cards for them to hit the discard pile for you to
Yeah.
die. I hope you're okay with conceding in that position.
Eh, I just like to watch games get played out. I'm just like, just finish the game.
Yeah. So if it's deterministic, I think that you can just concede. If it's non-deterministic, that's when things get rough.
That's fair. And it's
Yeah.
hard because like part of that is understanding almost having every card in your deck, like you know exactly how many lessons, and then you're counting how many are like discarded and play in your hand. And like you like knowing all of that requires a lot of dedication to your deck. And just like
Yeah.
that's something I think most players don't do. But if you're able to do that, I think that helps you determine where that line is much better
Mhm.
because then you know exactly what to do. And I think you need to know that really well, plus your opponent's deck and plus the meta, and then like every line that you have to get out and every line that they could play. And like if you understand all of that calculus, then I think what you're talking about makes a lot of sense.
I mean, you don't need to be like exact on it. If it's like, oh man, My like 97% chance to lose the game rose to like 99.8% chance.
Play it
Yeah,
out.
that's probably
Play
okay.
it out. You still have 1% chance. Play it out.
Yeah. So I think that like for the metagame as a whole, it's fine that these lock decks exist out there. I don't think it's fine if they're too easily achieved, or if they are easily achievable, it's like very hard to interact with them effectively while they're either getting set up or while they after they've been set up. So it's like for me, it's a power level issue.
Well,
And
and I think a great example of that is Hogwarts of History when it was still 6 power. You could play Hogwarts of History, get the extra power from Hogwarts of History to get deboning, and then like the ease of setting that up, especially just in 2 colors, it just like made itself happen, which was too low stakes for you to have to like set that up. So I think that's a really good example of like it needs to be more difficult than just that.
yeah, and that's like where I consider like this is bad and unhealthy for the game is like when people are getting pushed into either playing these play patterns that they don't want to play or their opponent they're seeing it too much in their games because it is too strong or they don't feel like they have effective tools to fight back against them. I don't think that any of the decks that we talked about above are like, oh, these are 100% like tier zero. No one can compete with these decks. In fact, I would be perfectly happy to like put money on that. None of these are tier zero decks, except maybe CVS.
Yeah.
We
I
don't talk
mean,
about
I think
CVS.
there's like potential for some of them. I just think that like the
Mhm.
right build for some of them to like reach that point hasn't happened yet.
And it's also, I think, just very meta dependent because
Yeah.
as being on the control side, like you have to have answers to the meta, and currently the meta is like very wide, very undefined.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but that's like my opinion as like on the game side of things. On the other side of things, there's always like the fun angle of like not the power level angle of like should these exist? Are they healthy for the meta? Blah 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 blah. It's like are these fun for the people that are doing it, or are these fun for the people that's being played against?
And that's a really hard thing to have to balance too, right? Because, like I said earlier, there's control players out there who are going to have the best time of their life telling people don't play this game and then play it themselves. And then there's a lot of people who are going to have that played against them. They're going to be like, I don't want to play this anymore. And then may never play the game ever again, or may take a break from it, or whatever, or may just see a certain type of deck and say, I'm not even going to bother playing this. You win and just move on to the next game. Balancing that is really hard because we can't balance like personalities with the cards. But we can try to give those people that is played against ways to get out of it. And that's through like design and everything like that. But taking both of those into account, like who is it fun for and not fun for is always something to think about. And that's factored into our BNR convos as well. Some of the cards just are not fun, and that's not the sole reason that they're banned, but that was a part of it.
It's hard.
Yeah,
Fun is deeply subjective, as it should
very,
be.
yes.
And the only fun that we can track is our own fun. So
Yep.
as designers, like we have to try to put ourselves in the shoes of people that we can never put ourselves in the shoes of. And
Yep.
it gets rough, but
Yes, it does.
maybe we're doing a good job, maybe we're not. Who knows?
I mean, it seems like people, at least with some of the bans and like getting rid of like Caught by Snape and whatever, people are generally happy by that being more balanced. So hopefully
Yeah,
we're moving in the right direction.
yeah, I haven't heard much blowback from BNR, which maybe is good.
Maybe.
But that's also a good segue into talking about how to balance them in design, because the first topic is banned and restricted lists and erratas.
Probably the most cut and dry tool that we have in terms of balancing really anything in the game
Yeah.
is just saying you can't play it. So, Caught by Snape, you just can't play anymore. Letters from No One, you just can't play anymore. And just saying, like, hey, these things are banned. We're going to remove this from being either like even a thing within this game that you can even consider. It's no longer a part of it. Let's just get rid of it. And so that's just the most cut and dry example.
And a lot of the cards on the banned and restricted list are there because they created either hard or soft locks that
Yep.
were either too easy to set up or too rewarding once they were set up, or a combination of both. Caught by Snape, Deboning, Letters from No One, Escaping the Dursleys, Invincible Ink, Scribblefors. These are all there because they kind of just lock your opponent out of the game. Hogwarts of History is one of the errata cards. That's there because it was creating too easy of a lock. The other one was Brass Scales. That's also kind of there because it combos with Love Potion. Also other problematic things.
Yeah.
The risk reward on Brass
Many.
Scales a little bit high. But
Yes.
anyways, we have used the banned and restricted list multiple times in the past to kind of combat these playstyles because we recognize that even some of these soft locks were just not fun to play against. They
Yeah.
created bad play patterns, and that happens.
And there haven't been like any super like awful to play against cards anymore. So we may
Pep
add
Talk.
one or two
Pep
to
Talk.
the. I think Pep Talk is fine, but that's a different. That's a whole podcast episode within itself. But we've kind of hit most of the ones that were just like absolutely awful. So hopefully we won't have to like add many, if any more. But you know, every June 1st we do a BNR update, so we'll see what happens next. But yeah, I think we're in a good spot with the BNR now.
Of course, the best way that we would like to interact with locks, either as a playstyle or counteracting that playstyle, because I do think that like lock decks and combo decks should be a thing.
Yes.
They just shouldn't be oppressive.
Yes, they should not be the most dominant thing that nothing else can compete with.
So, like, our best tool is hopefully just designing new cards. The best way to get out of a lock is to design cards that interact with lock. I think that that creates a more dynamic playstyle than like just saying deboning is banned. You cannot play deboning anymore. Unfortunately, there's not really a great design space to fight against deboning with new cards. Like you can play this card when your opponent has played deboning on you. Which like
That'd be
yeah,
hilarious.
Professor Flitwick does exist, Charms Master, but that's also just not like enough. We don't want every deck that plays against deboning to have to start Professor Flitwick Charms Master.
And then to have to use spells like that either. Like we want it to be diverse and just be able to have multiple decks be able to deal with like these situations.
Yeah. So if we want to interact with locks, we should try to find ways to do it in a manner that kind of gives more back and forth interaction between the players. And one of these is hopefully going to be in the upcoming new set, which is actually going to be a new advanced lesson in Charms. I believe the text states like you may use an action to discard this card from play to return a adventure to your opponent's hand.
Yep.
And then it provides a Charms lesson like or Charms power like all Charms lessons do, but it only provides this Charms power for Charms cards.
Yeah, so it's a way to like proactively get set up to deal with an adventure that may like lock you out or whatnot while still giving you some kind of advantage. So hopefully that gets printed. I think it will, unless there's some like egregious thing with it, but hopefully the restrictions on it will get it printed.
It might go through a couple more iterations. I think this is probably like the card that we've talked about on these podcasts that is most likely to change, but that's how it is as it currently stands.
Yes.
Maybe we decide only providing Charms power for Charms cards is a little bit too restrictive of its power level, but hopefully not. We'll see.
But some other things that we've tried to do just to kind of like design cards that can interact with these locks. Some of these have to be set up way beforehand, like Confiscated Map to cut down on the adventures, but then we banned a lot of the adventures that were really bad for the lock. So Confiscated Map was like, it's still okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
If your opponent's running adventures, or it also stops events, right? Like some
Yes,
decks
both.
are kind of event heavy, so just play it. It's fine.
And then other cards that just like help you with card draw overall that are not action bound or whatever, that are just like incidental draw, or incidental like power. Like these little things are attempts that we have made to try to give you all tools to get around these hard locks.
Your seventh purple firecrackers isn't actually that scary when you're drawing like 3 or 4 cards a turn with quick camp kit, right?
Yeah.
You just kind of dilute the hand destruction with more card draw.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And on the other flip side of things, we hopefully will print more cards that like contribute to this kind of playstyle because we know that some people like doing that. Some people just want to watch their opponent suffer, sit there for 20 turns, being unable to do anything. Remember, you're allowed to ask for a concession at any time. And you are allowed to concede the game at any time.
Yep, you are.
But in our list of like types of decks or cards examples that we had, about half of them were actually used revival cards. Love Potion, Faux Glass, Rubius Hagrid, Hogwarts of History. These are all cards that, well, Rubius Hagrid is like very, very different directions. But one of those
Yes.
directions is, of course, that kind of control deck, Forbidden Corridor, which makes sense because Fluffy's there.
Yeah,
Hagrid
no,
likes Fluffy.
the flavor is just really on point there.
Hopefully, there's going to be more stuff in the pipeline later. I can't talk about anything else right now, but maybe later.
Yeah, and part of the effort with the BNR and some of the cards that we have designed is to keep this balance between control, aggro, and mid-range kind of deck and make sure that they're all kind of balanced a little bit. So as we make more aggro cards like Lynch, we need to make sure that we're making more of these kind of like control-y cards. So we're aware of that and trying to keep that balance within the game as well. So definitely some area of this will be explored more. So thanks for joining us to chat about hard locks and soft locks and what that looks like in this game. Hopefully you can take some of the stuff that we talked about and incorporate it into your deck building and your playing, and it just makes you a little more aware of some of these things, especially with a tournament that we're in right now. And then we'll have more events happening in 2026. Make sure to follow us on social media. Check out our website. We will post the 2026 events in a couple of weeks. We're going to have some new themed events where you'll have to build a deck around a particular theme. But we'll announce all of that around the new year, so be on the lookout for that. Follow us on Discord, YouTube, Instagram, all the things, and we'll and we'll chat with you all soon. See ya.
Peace.